Hi, my name's Ryan.
What's your name? My name is Hayden.
I'm Erica.
I'm Sawyer. I'm Lincoln.
And I'm Tiana.
And we are the Rettews, and
And you're
here's
Happy
our
Family.
story. Some of Hayden's strengths are that he is very, very determined. Right, buddy? You're persistent, and you're determined, and you don't give up. And one thing's really special about you, Hayden, is you've brought so many people together. People that we never met, people who we never would have met or connected with, all because of you. Hayden was 2 months old when he had his first seizure. I had him at the pediatrician's earlier that day for his 2-month checkup, and he had his first round of vaccines. Hayden was fine. We had put him to bed that night. You had put him to bed, I think, actually.
Yep.
And he wasn't running a fever or anything, so I didn't bother with Tylenol.
Yeah, I heard a scream on
Like
on the baby monitor, and I went up there to check on him, and he was face down. He had thrown up. He was face down in it, and then I noticed that he was, convulsing. So I had picked him up to get him, to kind of figure out what was going on, and
Screaming.
yeah, and it appeared to me at that point that he seemed to be having, some sort of a seizure.
And we put him in the car, drove him to LGH, and he had a fever at the time, and they said it was a febrile seizure and that it probably wouldn't happen again, and that this is a very common thing in infants and children, and that they usually outgrow it if it does happen again. But they decided they were going to keep him overnight for observation. We went home, and everything was fine. A month later, we had a babysitter, and luckily it was a family friend, one of which was an adult who's calm. And we were at my brother-in-law's 30th birthday party where we had no cell phone reception.
Correct.
And Steph was bathing Hayden, and he had a seizure in the bathtub that would not stop. So she called 911. We raced to the hospital. I think he had just got done seizing right before we got there. He had an IV in his skull because they couldn't find veins, because baby's veins are tiny, of course. And they told us that it was a little over 60 minutes. They did a CAT scan, an MRI. All of those came back normal. But because he had already had a seizure prior to this, and the duration of this seizure and what they had to do to stop it, they wanted to transfer him to Hershey for observation over the weekend and some further testing. So we went there. He had an EEG. That came back normal. And he didn't have any other seizures the rest of the weekend. So we got discharged, but they said they were going to diagnose him with epilepsy since this was his second seizure, and the nature that it was. So they wanted to start him on medication, and of course, we're new parents. We're like, okay, whatever, we'll do whatever to stop this, thinking that it would stop. And then a few weeks into him taking this medication, I started noticing he would just jerk, jerk, jerk all day long. And it just became more frequent, more intense. So I called the neurologist at Hershey and brought him back in for another EEG. And that is where these episodes happened every 1 to 3 seconds while he was sleeping. She had said he is having epileptic episodes. So she wanted to increase the medication. Later, we found out these are myoclonic seizures, and he continued to have lots of myoclonic seizures, even with the increase of the medication. The way he was seizing continuously just did not seem like a typical epileptic child. So we decided we were going to reach out to CHOP to get a second opinion. At our first visit there, the doctor that we saw, he was in his fellowship, and he told us at that first visit that he believed he had something called Dravet syndrome. And he said, don't Google it. So that's when I knew like it had to be something scary. Yes, we got the final diagnosis and
November 23rd.
drove home. I was just sobbing and had no idea what the future was going to look like. And he continued to seize and fail medications. We were in and out of the hospital constantly. Couldn't find drugs to help control his seizures. He was airlifted so many times, taken away. We didn't even know where he was going. Basically, we would put him on a plane with paramedics, and then we would drive and then find out when we got to CHOP where he was. There were, again, a couple of very scary times where we just didn't even know if he was going to make it. And then after his first birthday, he had an emergency admission into the hospital to start the ketogenic diet. This diet gave us control. We had the ability then to use rescue meds at home. They worked, they stopped the seizures, and he went 5 months completely seizure free. Things got really tough again when he turned 5. He started seizing more frequently again, and he really struggled behaviorally.
So there is so much more than just the seizures and, you know, the autism spectrum. I mean, there's behavioral, there's cognitive, there's developmental. So there's all, you know, the seizures at this point, you know, for us, it's kind of, I mean, it's just really second nature. The seizures and stuff, it's just, there's a lot of things that go into the condition as a whole. And
the regression, and we've really seen a lot of that over the last 6 years. I mean, he went from having mild intellectual disability to now severe intellectual disability. So Hayden's 10, and he's more like a 2-3-year-old.
At the time of his diagnosis, he was the only child in this county that had the condition that he had. So the local hospitals didn't really know much about it. So, I mean, we kind of had to be parents, doctors, advocates. I went to some standard epilepsy support groups, and then through that is kind of where I, you know, was introduced to the Dravet Foundation. So, yeah, we kind of, you know, figured we would get involved heavily at that point.
But thinking back to when he was first diagnosed to now and how far research has come, and that is one of the main reasons why DSF is so important to us, because the funds raised for them, the majority of it goes to research.
Part of the thing that was like emotionally hard for me was seeing, I think it was the best day that I had ever had with Hayden. No behaviors, no outbursts. He was so sweet and so kissy and so sweetie pie and lovey and his just kind self. And his day was rocked by seizures.
Yeah.
That entire day, it was like non-stop, and it was back to back, and it's like,
No
oh
balance.
my goodness. Those days where he's just happy and enjoying life, yes, that's when you see it happen. And it's awful because then he's out of it, and sometimes when he wakes up he's frazzled, and it's just awful. So how does it feel raising a medically fragile child alongside 2 typical children?
It is hard, because Hayden requires so much attention. It's hard having people in our house constantly. We have no privacy. People have seen me parent all of my kids, like my entire life. So I feel like judged, and it's hard. With you, it's easy. So I'm so thankful. But yeah, so my other kids, it's hard for them too to constantly have people in our house. Ever since Hayden was little, therapists, nurses come, go. It's hard. It affects everybody. I feel like I can't give them as much as I want and that they deserve. I lay in bed every night and think, did I do enough? Because it's so hard.
Watching you be a mother and a wife and a homemaker, like, everything all just balled up in one. I really admire you, and you wear so many hats, you carry so much weight, and I tell you all the time, you look amazing while you do it.
He truly helped shape me into the person that I am today. I've learned so much from him in the last 10 years than I've learned over my entire lifetime. And I don't think I would have been that person or could have done that without him and the experiences that I've been through. So for that, I am grateful.
What do you think your future will look like?
There's parts of me that feel like it's going to look still very difficult. And then there are parts of me who have so much hope that with science and research and the love and support that we have from our community and the Dravet community, that maybe we will have some normalcy. If you could have one wish for Hayden, what would it be?
That he's healthy. That he didn't have any seizures, and
That's really sweet.
and he was healthy.
I really want to send this message out tonight to the caregivers and to the caretakers, to the unsung heroes, the ones that get the littlest support, the ones that need the most support. To be sure that you're seen and that you're heard. The caregivers have also a very high incidence of anxiety, high incidence of depression, high incidence of hopelessness, low incidence of making themselves a priority, chronic frustration, worry, and a lot of uncertainty. So I just want to say, as you all go forward tonight, to remember to support your caregivers. Remember the grief and the loss, and particularly when we're dealing with a child with very high medical needs. There's grief and loss associated with that. The dreams and the hopes that you had for, quote, the normal child. And remember the siblings of the child with high medical needs. They also, sometimes are forgotten. So remember the caregiver, remember the unsung heroes. Thank you.
I do try to share a lot about Hayden's journey and our journey, the real, the raw. But another thing I did want to talk about is SUDEP, which I feel like a lot of people are not familiar with, just by following Hayden's journey. Which is sudden unexplained death and epilepsy. And that is the #1 cause of death in patients with Dravet syndrome. For people with epilepsy, it can happen at any point in your life. So we have the fear of, putting Hayden to bed every night and he just might not wake up. Dravet does not care. It does take lives. And this is why we continue to advocate and raise funds for the Dravet Syndrome Foundation. So thank you all for coming and being a part of this and helping us to raise funds, and hopefully finding a cure in the near future.
Thank you, God.